Okay, hello again. It's time for the next one. And hold on, this is slipping. Okay, all right. Anyway, here's the candle. I don't want it to burn the phone, so I'm going to move it over again. All right, we're going to get started. So, and don't forget, I'm putting a song on every video, or almost. If I do two about the same thing, then I put it at the end of the other one, but the last one. But I'm doing songs at the end of every video. And today's is a good one. Oh, this one is really moving, and you're going to need your Kleenex box. So, okay. All right. Oh, and we're going to do the calendar today. We're going to I'm going to try to wrap that up today. And you'll see why I had to wait. It's just, I didn't forget. I just had to wait, because the way this is laid out, it's just that way. Okay, so at the first indicator, I'll whip it out, okay? All right. Put this on too. So today is, the day of, technically, that would be the day of the Last Supper, which was the Passover feast. So, but I'm ahead, of course, because I had to do it that way because there wasn't that much early in the week. There were a lot of, teachings and parables and cleaning out the temple kind of thing. But I didn't want to go over every parable here. And the temple thing was quick. And there was so much material later that I wanted to break that down and spread it out and not squeeze it all in, crowd it into a day or two. So I spread it out over the week, on one day I'll do this, on one day I'll do that. So we are already up to the part where, of course, they've arrested Jesus in the garden. They've taken him into custody, and all that other stuff has already begun. So we'll just continue through that today, and then tomorrow we'll finish that up. And I know it is hard to read over some of these things, and then there's sometimes things going on with the platform too, so I have to, kind of word it a certain way maybe. But anyway, so all right, now we are in Matthew 27, and it's 1 through 31, so they're going to be longer readings today. All right, here. So I'll just try to move along. Okay, here we go. Look, when morning came. Okay, so we have the next. Oh, my throat. Hold on. Sorry, it's been acting funny lately. These are the little clues here. Okay, so we know they had the Passover meal, the Last Supper. And then they went out to the garden, which was the Mount of Olives. Then came, all that stuff with the arrest, and they took Jesus, and, some of them went along and then went away and all that. This went on all night, what was happening went on all night until the next morning. And then the next morning was Friday morning, and then the crucifixion was on Friday. And we'll see that as we move through that's what it was, because it calls it the preparation day of the Sabbath, which has to be a Friday, because the Sabbath was a Saturday, and they wanted to perform the burial before that. So it all lines up. And then the resurrection was Sunday morning. So And it's the third day. Some people get caught up on the 3 days and 3 nights, but it's because it's on the third day. So first day, for second day, third day. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then you have the things about the sundown when the day starts. So, that's what matters is it was what it was supposed to be. People get hung up on, oh, wait a minute, if it's 3 whole days, then we have to go back to this day. So it had to be there, and then they get it all wrong. So anyway, okay. So I'll get the calendar, but here, when morning came, all the chief priests and elders of the people plotted against Jesus to put him to death. And when they had bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate, the governor. Okay, so remember, the whole area was occupied by Rome at the time. This took place during the Roman Empire. And they also had control of Israel, so they were under Rome at the time. They called it the Roman occupation, because Rome had all of the Mediterranean. I mean, it went from North Africa, looped around Israel, and went all the way around like Rome, and I don't know what exactly. There are maps of this, and it shows you like it really was all of the Mediterranean. So at least at one point. So anyway, but that's why you get all these different levels of leadership here. Like you have then this guy was in Rome or over Rome. He wasn't in Rome, but he was of Rome. This Pontius Pilate. Okay, some background always is helpful. Okay, now. Then Judas, his betrayer, seeing that he had been condemned, was remorseful and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. And they said, What is that to us? You see to it. Then he threw down the pieces of silver in the temple and departed, and went and hanged himself. So again, this was in what I read yesterday, that whole thing that he returns the money to the temple, throws it down, all of this was prophesied. And they didn't argue that it was innocent blood, they didn't really, they were about as remorseful as he was, which was like zero. I mean, he hanged himself, but, I think it was kind of more of a fulfillment of judgment here, but okay. Anyway, so moving on. But the chief priest took the silver pieces and said, It is not lawful to put them into the treasury because they are the price of blood. And they consulted together and bought with that money, the potter's field to bury strangers in. Therefore, that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the value of him who was priced, whom they of the children of Israel priced, and gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord directed me. Okay, and then let me see here. And it has this reference down there for, it says Jeremiah 32, 6-9. Okay, so, we'll see all that stuff on the list is fulfilled as this moves along. Okay, all right, let me do the calendar first. Now, I know I keep talking about it, so I'm gonna do it. All right. So here, I'm gonna make this smaller again. Hold on. Try this. Oop. Well, let me try this one. Okay, I'll go back to this one. Yeah. All right. Here's what we had so far, All right, now here, um, I am just going to put this here. Okay, because I know it's here. You'll see. Okay, so we have Thursday was the Passover meal. That's when they ate it. Okay, Passover meal, which was referred to as the Last Supper. Okay, and then that's when we had the I'll put this Mount of Olives. This is the Garden of Gethsemane. It's somewhere connected to that. That's where you had, the betrayal and the arrest that night. Okay. And then all of this, he's in custody this whole time. And then that's where it says the next morning. Or in the morning, and that's Matthew 27:1. Okay. And this is also, I mean, we'll see it today or tomorrow, but as we go along, at least it's, I'm going to fill it out now, so you'll remember when we run into it. This Friday, because that's how we know it's Friday, is called the preparation day of the Sabbath. And the Sabbath is Saturday, and the preparation day was the day before. They did these things to get ready so they didn't have to do any customary work on that whatever holiday, like in this case the Sabbath. Okay, so it's the day before Saturday. And this is also when you have the burial. So I'll put this here. All right. And then we have the Sabbath. And this is when he's in the body, is in the tomb. And then Sunday morning, early in the morning, is the resurrection. So try to squeeze this in. Which also happens to be the Feast of First Fruits. That year it was that day. Okay, and it's also the third day since here, so I'll add that in here. Just do it this way. The third day. Okay. So all of this is here, and we'll refer back to this as it moves along, okay? But this way, at least, the calendar is at least finally filled out. And again, keep in mind, sundown to sundown was one day for them. Okay, so we'll keep this at the side, and as we go along, we'll whip it out. Okay, and I mentioned this. Then you have 40 days later is the Ascension, which is a Thursday. 50 days later, you have Pentecost, which is another Sunday, 10 days after the Ascension, and that was the Feast of Pentecost, and that's when Pentecost Day was, when the Holy Spirit descended on them. So we'll read about all that a little later. Okay, so now I'll leave this right there, and we'll get back to reading. Okay, So we're right up here, and I have to put this back on 2. It's 1, and this is 2, the magnifying factor, Okay, so now in verse 11, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said to him, "It is as you say." And while he was being accused by the chief priests and elders, he answered nothing. So remember, the lamb is silent, So then Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many things they testify against you?" But he answered him not one word, so that the governor marveled greatly. Now, at the feast, the governor was accustomed to releasing to the multitude one prisoner whom they wished. And at that time, they had a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. Therefore, when they had gathered together, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ, or Messiah?" For he knew that they had handed him over because of envy. So even he knew this, right? All right. While he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent to him, saying, "Have nothing to do with that just man, for I have suffered many things today in a dream because of him." But the chief priests and elders persuaded the multitudes that they should ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The governor answered and said to them, "Which of the 2 do you want me to release to you?" They said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "What then shall I do with Jesus, who is called Christ?" They all said to him, "Let him be crucified." Then the governor said, "Why, what evil has he done?" But they cried out all the more, saying, "Let him be crucified." When Pilate saw that he could not prevail at all, but rather that a tumult was rising, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, "I am innocent of the blood of this just person. You see to it." And all the people answered and said, "His blood be on us and on our children." So that's what happened in, a certain way. Now, again, this isn't the same crowd that was crying Hosanna. This was a different crowd. So, and this wasn't referring to the atonement. That's another situation we have going on here. So, okay, 26. Then he released Barabbas to them, and when he had scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. There's that part. Okay. All right. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole garrison around him. And they stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him. When they had twisted a crown of thorns, they put it on his head, and a reed in his right hand. And they bowed the knee before him and mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews." Then they spat on him and took the reed and struck him on the head. And when they had mocked him, they took the robe off him, put his own clothes on him, and led him away to be crucified. Okay, so that was 31. And then this part is tomorrow. Okay, so put your little bookmark in, and we'll pick that up tomorrow. Now, next one is Mark 15, 1 to 20. Yeah, so it's the same kind of, reading here. So, all right, 15:1. Immediately in the morning, So again, we see that the mourning thing. The chief priests held a consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council, and they bound Jesus, led him away, and delivered him to Pilate. Then Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered and said to him, "It is as you say." And the chief priests accused him of many things, but he answered nothing. Then Pilate asked him again, saying, "Do you answer nothing? See how many things they testify against you." But Jesus still answered nothing, so that Pilate marveled. Now, let me move this. Now at the feast he was accustomed to releasing one prisoner to them, whomever they requested, and there was one named Barabbas, who was chained with his fellow rebels. They had committed murder in the rebellion. Then the multitude, crying aloud, began to ask him to do just as he had always done for them. But Pilate answered them, saying, "Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews?" For he knew that the chief priests had handed him over because of envy. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd so that he should rather release Barabbas to them. Pilate answered and said to them again, "What then do you want me to do with him whom you call the king of the Jews?" So they cried out again, "Crucify him." Then Pilate said to them, "Why, what evil has he done?" But they cried out all the more, "Crucify him." So Pilate, wanting to gratify the crowd, released Barabbas to them, and he delivered Jesus after he had scourged him to be crucified. Then the soldiers led him away into the hall called Praetorium, and they called together the whole garrison. And they clothed him with purple, and they twisted a crown of thorns, put it on his head, and began to salute him, "Hail, King of the Jews." Then they struck him on the head with a reed and spat on him, and bowing the knee, they worshipped him. And when they had mocked him, they took the purple off him, put his own clothes on him, and led him out to crucify him. Okay, and then again here we'll pick up tomorrow. Then we have Luke 22, 66 to 71. Okay, here. This is that last little part in 22. As soon as it was day, so again, the next morning, the elders of the people, both chief priests and scribes, came together and led him into their council, saying, "If you are the Christ, tell us." But he said to them, "If I tell you, you will by no means believe. And if I also ask you, you will by no means answer me or let me go. Hereafter the Son of Man will sit on the right hand of the power of God." Then they all said, "Are you then the Son of God?" So he said to them, "You rightly say that I am." And they said, "What further testimony do we need? For we have heard it ourselves from his own mouth." Okay. And now we're moving into this part 23, 1 to 25. Then the whole multitude of them arose and led him to Pilate, and they began to accuse him, saying, "We found this fellow perverting the nation and forbidding to pay taxes to Caesar, saying that he himself is Christ, a king." Then Pilate asked him, saying, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered him and said, "It is as you say." So Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no fault in this man." But they were the more fierce, saying, "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, beginning from Galilee to this place." here we go. When Pilate heard of Galilee, he asked if the man were a Galilean. And as soon as he knew that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time. Now, when Herod saw Jesus, he was exceedingly glad, for he had desired for a long time to see him, because he had heard many things about him, and he hoped to see some miracle done by him. Then he questioned him with many words, but he answered him nothing. And the chief priests and scribes stood and vehemently accused him. Then Herod, with his men of war, treated him with contempt and mocked him, arrayed him in a gorgeous robe, and sent him back to Pilate. That very day, Pilate and Herod became friends with each other, for previously they had been at enmity with each other. So they were having fun with this, Okay, so, he didn't answer because he's supposed to be silent. That's what it says about the lamb. And he didn't know this, Herod, but still, that's no reason to all of a sudden, like, he just turned on him all of a sudden, and got into this, doing all this. So, so anyway, Herod's, any of them were always bad. Okay, 13. Then Pilate, when he had called together the chief priests, the rulers, and the people, said to them, "You have brought this man to me as one who misleads the people, and indeed, having examined him in your presence, I have found no fault in this man concerning those things of which you accuse him. No, neither did Herod, for I sent you back to him, and indeed nothing deserving of death has been done by him. I will therefore chastise him and release him, for it was customary for him to release one to them at the feast." And they all cried out at once, saying, "Away with this man, and release to us Barabbas, who had been thrown into prison for a certain rebellion made in the city and for murder." Pilate, therefore, wishing to release Jesus, again called out to them. But they shouted, saying, "Crucify him, crucify him." Then he said to them the third time, "Why, what evil has he done? I have found no reason for death in him. I will therefore chastise him and let him go." But they were insistent, demanding with loud voices that he be crucified, and the voices of these men and of the chief priests prevailed. So Pilate gave sentence that it should be as they requested, and he released to them the one they requested, who for rebellion and murder had been thrown into prison, but he delivered Jesus to their will. Okay, so that's that till 25, and again, this is tomorrow. And it's interesting to notice, the guilty was let go, like the innocent was taken in place of the guilty. That's one of those things you see here in a picture of that. So, okay, I don't know what happened to Barabbas later. I have no idea. Okay, John 18. All right. We have John 18 and part of it, and 19. All right, so 18, 28 to 40. All right. Then they led Jesus from Caiaphas, that was that high priest, to the praetorium. And it was early morning. So again, we get the early morning thing. But they themselves did not go into the praetorium, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. Pilate then went out to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They answered and said to him, "If he were not an evildoer, we would not have delivered him up to you." Then Pilate said to them, "You take him and judge him according to your law." Therefore the Jews said to him, "It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death," that the saying of Jesus might be fulfilled which he spoke, signifying by what death he would die. Then Pilate entered the praetorium again, called Jesus, and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered him, "Are you speaking for yourself about this, or did others tell you this concerning me?" Pilate answered, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight so that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from here." Pilate therefore said to him, "Are you a king then?" Jesus answered, "You say rightly that I am a king. For this cause I was born, and for this cause I have come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" And when he had said this, he went out again to the Jews and said to them, "I find no fault in him at all. But you have a custom that I should release someone to you at the Passover. Do you therefore want me to release to you the King of the Jews?" Then they all cried again, saying, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a robber. Okay, it's also interesting to notice that, Barabbas was probably one of the, it says he was leading a rebellion, and they had a lot of types that were trying to lead a rebellion against Rome and gain their independence back, and then they would think that's the Messiah, and this kind of thing has been going on the whole time. So they were more interested in that, even though the man was a murderer and a thief. They were not interested in Jesus, the true Messiah and Lamb of God. So anyway, it's kind of interesting. But yeah, okay, so we did that. Now 19, so John 19, 1 to 16. All right. So then Pilate took Jesus and scourged him, and the soldiers twisted a crown of thorns and put it on his head. And they put on him a purple robe. Then they said, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they struck him with their hands. Pilate then went out again and said to them, "Behold, I am bringing him out to you, that you may know that I find no fault in him." Then Jesus came out, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, and Pilate said to them, "Behold the man." Therefore, when the chief priests and officers saw him, they cried out, saying, "Crucify him, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "You take him and crucify him, for I find no fault in him." The Jews answered him, "We have a law, and according to our law he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God." Okay, now they forgot to consider the possibility that he actually was the Son of God, which he was, but again, they delivered him because of envy. All right, 8. Therefore, when Pilate heard that saying, he was the more afraid, and went again into the praetorium and said to Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gave him no answer. Wait, I gotta move this around. Then Pilate said to him, "Are you not speaking to me? Do you not know that I have power to crucify you and power to release you?" Jesus answered, "You could have no power at all against me unless it had been given you from above. Therefore, the one who delivered me to you has the greater sin." So there it is, when people start pointing fingers, there it is, okay? All right. From then on, Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, saying, "If you let this man go," now watch this, "you are not Caesar's friend. Whoever makes himself a king speaks against Caesar." Now, all of a sudden, they care so much about Caesar, the guy they're trying to get off their backs. All of a sudden, he's so important, and his reign is so, revered by them or something. And they're just trying to find something against Jesus, Now, like, "Oh, you guys are all enemies of Caesar now, we don't want to speak against Caesar now, would we?" I mean, it's so just hypocritical. All right, so they themselves want to get rid of Caesar over them, If they had a king that they would have wanted who would overthrow Caesar, they would be totally happy with that. And now all of a sudden they're betraying him because he's also claiming to be a king, He is that king, but anyway, so they, rejected him, so that's why they're also doing this. So So anyway, that's what happens here. Okay. When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he brought Jesus out and sat down in the judgment seat in a place that is called the Pavement, but in Hebrew, Gabbatha. Now it was the preparation day of the Passover. So now, okay, this is another thing. Some places say Sabbath and some say Passover, but we'll see that coming up, that it's Sabbath. So I don't know, but it's still technically, I believe, the Passover, since it goes from sundown to sundown. And it would make sense that that's when the crucifixion occurred, of course, So anyway, but the preparation day would have been the day earlier. But again, you'll see it says Sabbath in the other spots tomorrow. All right, and about the 6th hour. And he said to the Jews, "Behold your king." I'll get to that 6th hour again. But they cried out, away with him, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" Another thing, he's the only real king. Okay, so it's just so ironic that, it depends on who they like and who they don't like. And then all of a sudden they're loyal to Caesar or they're not loyal to Caesar based on that. And here they're totally kissing up to Caesar, just to get rid of him out of envy, It's just ironic. Okay, now there's one more verse here for this part. The chief priests answered, "Oh, this is just classic. We have no king but Caesar." Oh my goodness, it gets worse, Now they're so loyal to Caesar. They know they're lying. I mean, oh my, come on. I mean, my goodness. All right. 16. Then he delivered him to them to be crucified. Then they took Jesus and led him away. Okay, so here again we have this part is tomorrow, all of that. And now we'll do that tomorrow. Now I'm going to get to this other thing for the calendar here. So that is this little page I have, again, that shows this thing. Here. change the magnifying thing. Okay, so just for, reference sake, real quick, here we have these hours. You know how they had broken up their days and our time. So the 6 hour, what they just mentioned once again, would have been this hour here between 12 and 1, so noon to 1 p.m. So we're at that point of the day on Friday so far, okay? All right. And then this goes on, tomorrow I'll whip this out again for what comes up in there with this timing thing. Okay, and I covered that. Okay, and I got this all done in one video. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to, but I did it. All right, tomorrow we have the actual event. Okay, so I'll do that tomorrow. 2 videos I have for tomorrow, as a matter of fact. So, all right. Actually 3, because then that's the burial. I'm doing that tomorrow. Yeah, 3 videos tomorrow, and this is the one for today. All right, and that's actually a good thing because I'm going to be cooking this afternoon. I'm going to be making, the fancy meal for this time, so I'll be busy all afternoon. All right. Well, so that's where we are at so far. So you have a blessed day, and I will include the song right after this. So don't forget, enjoy that song. Leave me your comments as usual, and I will be back tomorrow.